everyone, welcome back to the Boozers Basketball Podcast, the podcast where we like to drink beer sometimes and talk basketball with friends. I'm your host, Amir Motamani, joined here today with Neil Joshi, Vonik Panosian, and Panos George. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Neil?
Doing great. I'm happy to talk about this Heat Celtics Game 7. I know that was a tough ending for you, Amir, but
for
great
sure.
season by the Heat.
Hoping we could have made it to the finals and I could have turned this into a Miami Heat podcast, since every game would have been a preview and a recap of a Miami Heat game. So no more Miami Heat podcast.
Wrong bet, Amir. You should have bet on Attila instead of Van Dam.
Yeah, if anybody else watched the last podcast, I said wrong bet when Vonik picked the Celtics in 7. I picked the Heat in 7. So there's no way we could lose 3 in a row at home, which obviously happened. But I guess we're living in like a simulation, a multiverse right now where Van Dam doesn't win. It's Attila. Yeah, it's shitty outcome. Panos, what are you laughing over here for? What are you smiling about? And why'd you say about?
Because I feel like crap from my vacation, food poisoning, and 2, the Heat are not as good as we thought they were.
Just like the Lakers. Anyway,
we know that.
So yeah,
Darvin Ham, baby, Darvin Ham.
Yes. AKA Kurt Rambis.
You think Darvin Ham's going to move the needle real quick before we get into the real basketball?
Absolutely not. Nothing's going to move the needle.
I agree, because lead GM is going to have to make some specific moves this season, right?
Is Russ still on the team?
I thought it was a prank.
Yeah. Is Russ still on the team?
Unfortunately for you, yes.
Yeah, we're not doing anything. So.
How much is he making next year?
47.
Terrible. Anyway, let's do a quick recap of the Heat and Celtics Game 7. I just, as a Heat fan, am like proud, disappointed, like of the season, right? It's been a roller coaster of a year. This was like one of the most fun and enjoyable Miami Heat seasons that I've witnessed as a Heat fan. Just really like the resilience of this team. It's been fun. They're torturous every season. It seems like it feels like every single year within like the clutch time when it's 5 minutes or less, the Miami Heat play the most games where it's decided between 5 points or less within the last 2 minutes or so. And so up and down, we've had injuries. Jimmy missed 25 games. Bam missed 25 games. Lowry missed like 18. Hero 15. So it's tough, and usually teams regress when they have injuries, but we kept going up the standings, right, to get that number 1 seed. So proud that team was able to do that. You look at Kevin Durant and the Nets; they went from top 3 to 7, 8, 9. Like Curry got hurt, right, for a little bit. I know they didn't have Clay for most of the year, but they were number 1 seed, right, for a decent portion of the season, and then they started losing once him and Draymond were out, right? So. Miami somehow just kept moving up in the standings, which was fun, right? It was a great season. We had scrubs like Gabe Vincent, come out of nowhere. Max Strus play really impactful minutes. Our vets, PJ and Lowry, were doing great in the regular season, but that all turned to shit in the playoffs where everybody regressed except for Jimothy, James, Jimmy, Bartholomew fucking Butler, who's one of those ones. He is a superstar, in my opinion. He earned it, I think, because he stepped up when it fucking matters, not like James Harden, who freaking chokes every playoffs. Sorry, don't go. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I'm just saying.
Don't do it.
It's just I was proud that we got this far and we did this well, but just really pissed because Bam was playing well below his season averages. He was averaging 20 and 10. Dropped to like 14 and 7. Hero, 6th man of the year, 21 points off the bench, averaging 12, right? So everybody but Jimmy, played well. And like we were the number 1 shooting team, 3-point percentage in the NBA all season long. Guess what we were in the playoffs out of 16 teams? We were freaking 13 or 14. So like I kept saying, it's going to go back to the mean. It's going to go back to the mean. And Neil's like, I don't know if it's going to. And Neil's like calling me out on that shit. And he was right. So anyway, sorry about the Miami Heat diatribe. I mean, I'm just extremely disappointed, sad, but also excited, happy, content for the most part. And I freaking hate the Boston Celtics, so we'll get into that. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on Game 7, just overall, Vonik? Start with you.
I thought it was a good game. I thought it was the just reverse version of kind of the game six, and you kind of in game six knew that the Heat were in control the whole game. And even though the Celtics kept getting close, the Heat ended up pulling that game out. And then game seven was the same thing, but the Celtics just a little bit in front. And then I'm just kind of glad how it ended as far as the the last second shot by Jimmy and them kind of bridging the gap. Good series. I think, Miami Heat does have a lot to be proud of. I know it's not easy for you right now, but, 5 games away from a championship, still pretty successful season. I think takeaways are, I think you guys got to address the backup point guard spot still. And then the development, like you just kind of touched on, like Bam's got to be more consistent. Hero, I mean, disappeared. You could obviously attribute that to his injury, but he's got to be one of the big three on that team. You guys got some question marks, but still really promising.
Yeah, what do you think, Neil?
I think it was a great season for the Heat. They weren't really considered to be on the level of a Brooklyn or maybe a Milwaukee in the preseason. They exceeded
No way.
expectations all season. They got the number 1 seed. And you could just tell during the series with Boston when things started to slow down, there was a lot of difficulty getting things going offensively if they weren't getting out in transition. It was tough for them to score. Some of that you got to give credit to Boston's defense, but Miami could really think through how they want to make their offense a little bit more smooth, get some baskets in the half court. I mean, Jimmy was just an absolute dog. You said it already. He's already demonstrated that when playoff time comes around, he's someone you can trust. He'll coach during the regular season, but between this playoff run and the 2020 bubble, I mean, you already know he's going to bring in the playoffs. So I just disregard what he's doing in the regular season. He's probably just trying to peak at the right time of the season. You get a couple of sneaky good free agent pickups, build up the roster, which we already know Miami can do, and you expect them to be right back at the end of the playoffs going forward next season. I mean, the core is in place. You just got to kind of build around the edges and make your team a little bit better, and you'll be right back in this position again next year.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like we had enough. I mean, we obviously exceeded expectations. I was projecting them to be like the 3rd seed or 4th seed at best. Didn't think Lowry and Tucker were going to move the needle that dramatically to push them to like a 1 or 2 because of their age, right? But I knew they were going to make us better defensively. They both have championship experience, right? So some intangibles. But yeah, I think we do need to address some positions. I wanted, you mentioned point guard or backup. I think Gabe could fill that role potentially. He's not much of a playmaker per se, but I think he could suffice potentially. I think we need another big off the bench. We try to play small ball a lot with Boston, which worked at times, but that we sacrificed rebounding at times with Horford and Williams. But I think getting a 5 or a 4, like a backup true kind of power forward, could be helpful to put it next to Bam. It just sucks. I feel like we just missed too many shots. I think we all said at the beginning, before the series started, was like, it's going to come down to 3-point shooting because they're so good in terms of defense. The Miami Heat held the Celtics to like under 103 times and lost, 3 games, I believe, where the Celtics had like 90 something points, right? So like we were there with them, shutting each other out in that half court set, right? Like they started moving the ball quicker, to Neil's point, trying to get more transition buckets because it's easier to get points on teams that are that good defensively when they're not set. So just sucks that we didn't make enough shots. Injuries, like I know like everybody's injured, so I can't just use that for us, but it does suck when your team is a little more injured. But like even with that, we still could have won. That, which pisses me off. Like it came down to the shooting, like literally averaging like 20% or so, right? Like we hit 40% in game 6. That was the first time basically since the one other time we did it against the Sixers. And we did that only once against the Hawks. In each round, we had one game of 40% or above, which is crazy. So disappointing, frustrating, but tip your hat off to the Celtics. They're obviously a good young team. Tatum and Brown did enough, and they had that 3rd star. So Smart, very inefficient as usual when it comes to his field goal percentage, but he did enough just generally and hit some big shots that were timely last game. So Panos, I know you're at the happiest place on earth. Did you have a chance to see any highlights or any opinion on just the series or?
Game 7, I did catch a little bit during lunch. So like they shot 20% from 3. They shot 42% like from the field, right? The only people that showed up were Bam and Butler. Butler played amazing. Bam played great. But no defensive stats, no steals, no blocks on the other end. And then the rest of the team just like they like fell asleep. Like they just went 30% from shooting, and like Lowry went 1 for 6. Like everyone just shot poorly besides those 2 players. You said Tucker got hurt. And then that review of like the Strus 3 where they said he stepped out of bounds, but it really wasn't out of bounds. If they counted that, I don't think Butler's shooting that 3 to try to win the game, right?
They
He's
would be
gonna go
winning
for it
by
too.
1 in that scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not as simple as like
Yeah,
adding
I
3 points.
agree. I agree.
It
Yeah,
would have
but-
been a different gameplay or
But
plan.
it changes the momentum of like Spoelstra said, like, hey, we that 3 put us down 2, and then they made a couple buckets, and it's like, hey, we're down 8. Let's
Yeah.
keep it within single digits and chip away. We were at 17 in the first quarter, right? We have 3 minutes left, and then now you look up, you're down by 11, and they're at the free throw line. Now it's 13. You're like, wait, what? What just happened? So, go ahead,
I
Mike.
just don't know how they overturned that. Like
it's a momentum killer, but that's not why he lost, and you can't use that bullet point as to saying, hey, that's why. You know what I mean? And plus,
I'm not saying that's what they lost, but like Butler wouldn't shoot that 3.
there's a lot of time to recover and bounce back off that.
That's a Laker fan, obviously talking. No intelligent comments come from a Laker fan. Like
Really?
even I'm a freaking Homer biased Heat fan, and the first thing I said was like, that shit happened in the second quarter. Like you can't just simply add 3 points. I wish you could. Then I could be like, oh, we lost by 1, and
Oh, that happened in the second quarter?
and Hero was hurt. And all these people, like, I mean, excuses are part of life. So I'm sorry. Sometimes they're facts, but
You guys
that is
remember?
not a fact.
You guys remember a couple seasons ago when James Harden dunked the ball so hard that it went up under the net and came back through, and the refs thought it didn't go in and they didn't count it, and we were up by like 27 points, and the Spurs came back and won that game.
It wasn't because of that, my friend. And also,
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. But a lot of people were like, hey, then they were just kind of deflated after that play, and we gave up like a 30-0 run.
I do remember that. And also, we just hit the quota for talking about James Harden, Mr. not relevant. So
New star of the podcast, James Harden.
So anyway, do you guys think he stepped out? I guess based on the evidence or the picture.
No.
Absolutely not.
Like, what's going through the mindset of like, I just joke around and always say like, this shit's rigged. The NBA wants for
It's
ratings and the superstars because they don't talk anything about the Heat in the media. They never give Jimmy Butler his flowers. All they're talking about is Jason Tatum, is he a superstar, yada yada yada. You could see in the narrative, in the writing, they want the Celtics to go, or the Bucks to the finals versus the Warriors. But I just felt like it was rigged, obviously not like sincerely, but how can they, like, who was this? Was this Scott Foster? Which we can get into, like, why the hell was Scott Foster in this series? Again, they couldn't find freaking Tony Brothers or someone else, but like, what are they looking at? Like, I don't understand. And like the timing aspect is also questionable. So like, is it not like inconclusive or whatever? Like how can they, you can't even tell that he stepped on that line, right? Like there's no proof. So like, how can you overturn it when there's no definitive proof saying he stepped on the line, right? Like even the evidence was not enough to say he stepped on the line. You can't definitively say he did. So like, why would they call that? And then why the hell would they call that like 7 to 10 minutes in real time, like later, in like 3 minutes basketball time? Usually, like, I've seen the new rule this year where if a guy's on the line and they shoot a 3 and they're like, hey, we went to commercial break or whatever, like, or during the timeout, we saw he stepped on the line. It's only 2, not 3, right? And they could change that. Like, how the hell were they able to change a play like this? So do you think it's good for basketball? Do you think this is bad for basketball that you can do stuff like this? Because I'm going to be biased right now and say I think it's bad because of what happened. But I obviously think if they can go back and make the right call, then that should be a good thing, right? That should be considered good. What are your thoughts, Neil?
Well, in general, I'm really starting to lose interest in going to the monitor all the time. I mean, when we didn't have this in place, we're like, yeah, let's review everything. But now we're getting too far in the other direction where there's causing a lot of stoppages in play, killing momentum. And for what exactly? A lot of these are like block charge calls, which are so subjective. You can look at the same play many, many times and still not reach a conclusive answer. So it's really starting to get to overkill where I'm wondering if we're losing the intended purpose and value of what we're trying to accomplish here. And you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Like, why are we looking at a 3-pointer that happened 4 minutes of game time ago? That's just irresponsible. Just shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to really lose sight of what we're getting positive out of this whole review process at this point.
Yeah, there's got to be a statute of limitations with the fucking amount of time can go by before you can review. Oh, it's the fourth quarter. Like, the Celtics are winning or losing, like because they want to like control who goes to the finals. Like, oh, in the second quarter, this happened or whatever. They can go back and review it. Unbeknownst to like the freaking team or the coaches, right? Like, no explanation to Spo or the Heat. So that, but again, we didn't lose because of that, right? Like, I'm not gonna say we lost because of that. We lost because we couldn't shoot for dick. So to Panos' point, 20%, 6 for 30 or whatever it was. So yeah, I quickly let's transition to the NBA finals, which I will be watching obviously, but not as thoroughly, and I'm not going to care as much because I'm a little sad, and I was going to go hopefully to one of these finals games if Miami was playing, because not many opportunities where I can go to see a Miami Heat finals game without having to travel out of state or to another city, right? Literally could have just took an Uber, went to a game, bucket list, got to experience that, which would have been fun. Not as fun as being at Miami, which that will potentially, my goal is to go to a Niners Super Bowl and then a Miami Heat finals game in Miami, where I'll be surrounded by friends and not booed at, right? Because I'm sure the Warrior fans would have gave me so much shit. Me screaming team to beat the whole time, right? So at Oracle or Chase. But anyway, quickly, I just want to give some flowers because, as the resident Miami Heat fan for this podcast, we're not going to be able to talk about them anymore. We'll talk about them in the offseason, and the content's going to shift. So we'll enjoy the finals. We'll try to do as many casts as we can throughout that time frame, and then we're going to talk more about just general basketball, maybe the history of basketball, right? Since we're all history fans of the sport. We'll talk about the Fakers, about rumors, trades, Russ, all that stuff. Darvin Ham. We'll talk about the Rockets. I'm sure Vonnie will talk about Harden. We'll talk a little bit about the Heat, and then Neil, whoever he decides to choose for that week, whoever he's a fan of, we could start, looking at those teams as well. But quick flowers, I want to give Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo respect for that game, especially Bam for being super aggressive and stepping up. And helping Jimmy be his number 2, which he's needed throughout these playoffs. Everybody else can suck my cock on the Heat, especially Kyle Lowry for doing nothing. Celtics, I'll give flowers to Tatum, even though I hate him. He pushes off literally every play, as I keep saying. Same with Jaylen Brown. But yeah, him and Brown, I'll give them their flowers. And I hate Marcus Smart, but those three came up really big, right? So those 5 players that I mentioned had the biggest impact on the game. And actually, I do have one last question to the panel before we switch gears. So Jimmy Butler shot. What are your thoughts on that? So I'm watching this game. We're in the mud. We're behind, as Vonnie mentioned, Celtics have control of this game from the get. 17-point lead in the first quarter. We dropped down to 6, which was very doable, manageable, right? I thought that was respectable that we came back down -1 in the third quarter. So we're down 7 going into the fourth. And then they consistently stayed, I think, within 8 to like 13 points that entire quarter until the last 2 minutes or so when Kyle Lowry, finally started stepping up a little bit. And it was basically Jimmy, bam, bam, Jimmy, bam, Jimmy, like in terms of baskets. No one else doing anything. Then Lowry got a couple of plays. Oladipo got a couple of plays. And it went from like 11 to 5 all of a sudden, or 6. And then just huge shot from Max Strus to put us, within 1, right? Like he had that fadeaway 3. He was 2 for like 10 the whole game, not shooting well. And we get a stop. Jimmy Butler gets a defensive rebound with 20 seconds left, no timeout. What are you guys' thoughts on that play by Jimmy Butler? Do you think that was a good play, or do you think that was a boneheaded play? Whoever wants to start.
I'm okay with it. Jimmy is your best player. He brought you here. Opponents are going to say that he's not a great 3-point shooter, which I get, but he's wide open in transition, and the offense has been struggling all game. It's struggled for long stretches in this series, and you want the best player on your team to have a chance to win the game. I really cannot argue against him taking that shot. It's as simple as that. I think if you start overanalyzing it, then you can kind of beat yourself up to death with like paralysis by analysis. But that's your best player. He's open. He's in rhythm. He brought you to this point, and it's for the win. Like I can't argue with that shot.
Yeah, what do you think, Panos?
Yeah, I agree with Neil on that. I mean, he's one of the big reasons you guys were the first seed. One of the big reasons you guys are in the conference finals. He came up like he was dribbling up. The defender gave him space, even though they shot 20%, but they were kind of on a little run over there at the end. He took a smart shot. Like I thought it was a great shot. It's just hit the front of the rim, and they couldn't get that rebound. But I thought it was a good shot.
I disagree. Not a smart shot at all. Was it an okay shot? Yes, because it's Jimmy Butler and he is open, but the smart shot would have been for him to keep going and pushing the ball. There's plenty of time. He's got 35-year-old Al Horford backpedaling, and he's got no help support defense. So Jimmy Butler, who we know he can get to the basket, could have easily blown by Horford and gotten himself a layup, maybe even an end one against Horford. But I think he kind of went into hero mode and he just jacked that three up too soon. If he makes it, great, but he didn't. And like Neil said earlier, the guy's shooting like 28% from three in this series. So do I want him to, could he have taken a smarter shot? For sure. I think he got greedy.
Who cares? Throw out the freaking Jimmy Butler percentages. He shot like 12% during the regular season. Like he's in clutch
No Jimmy
mode.
slander allowed.
No Jimmy slander allowed. No, you could slander Jimmy. I don't care about that. No, I mean, like in the playoffs, his uptick of the amount of threes that he was making, like his percentage skyrocketed compared to what it was in the regular season overall. But I agree with Monik. Like not the best shot. And I get it. He's hurt. He's tired. He played 47 minutes and 40 seconds up to that point with 20 seconds left, right? He literally did not miss a second in that game, which is nuts, right? Like for someone who's playing banged up. And so I get why he took it. He wanted to be the hero. They have no timeouts. He's like, do I want to go to overtime? We're banged up. I'm tired. I just want to see if we can make the shot and go to the finals versus going against that defense again for another, 5 minutes. But to Vonning's point, I don't think it was the best shot. I think literally when he took it, I understood why he took it. I'm not pissed that he took it, but it wasn't the best shot. He literally had the space, sure, right? Like Horford gave him some space. He attacked very quickly. It was unexpected. But guess who was down there to rebound? Nobody. Guess how much time was left? A lot. 17 seconds when he took it, right? He caught it at 20 seconds, took 5 dribbles, pulled up from that 3, and Kyle Lowry came flying in at the end of the picture to get that possible offensive rebound, but missed it. But there's no rebounders, and you're down 2. You don't need to take that shot, right? So I thought exactly what Vonnick said. You have a 35-year-old Al Horford backpedaling. If he committed to go drive downhill from the get, he would have got by Horford. He could have been shoulder to shoulder with him at one point, and Horford could have bodied him up a little bit, right, to detract them from getting to the cup untouched. But at that point, they're possibly going to call foul, or Jimmy is going to flop and throw a ball up there, and he's going to get 2 free throws, or he's going to make the layup, absorb the light contact, and get an and one. And do it the old-fashioned way, and then put them up 1 with 10 seconds left, right? And then you have to step up on D. So I agree with Vonnick. And I always love to disagree with Panos because he's a Laker fan.
I mean, Scott Foster was in the game. His mission was to get the Celtics to the finals. I think he did that.
Yeah.
They were going to call anything if he drove in and got that layup.
That's possibly fair, but Vonnie, of course, a freaking Laker fan thinks that's a good shot, right? A dumb, stupid shot. I'm just kidding, Panos.
That's because you guys don't have a superstar.
Neither do you anymore.
There's no more Dwayne Wade, no more LeBron, no more Chris Bosh.
Chris Bosh, I don't classify him as a superstar, especially when he was on the Heat.
He was with the Raptors.
20 and 10, I guess, is Bam a superstar? Anyway, all-star, not a superstar. Anyway, okay, so enough with the Heat. Season's over. You know, that sucked, but we'll be back next year. So quickly, just NBA Finals. Game 1 is on Thursday between the Celtics and the Warriors. We will do another podcast on Wednesday. If you guys are free, we'll do like a Game 1 preview, but let's keep this quick, nice and short. Just overall, what are your thoughts in terms of predictions for this series? So Vonnie mentioned earlier offline that this is going to be very intriguing, right? So this series in general, you know, there's a lot of star power, which is great. But we're talking about the number one defense, which is the Warriors, which we mentioned in a former podcast, right? Which I didn't realize that the Warriors were the number one defensive team in the playoffs. Celtics were the number one in the regular season, but the Celtics are number 2 ranked in the playoffs. Right, this is going to be possibly a defensive battle, but again, they have so much firepower on both sides in terms of the offensive end. So it's going to be unique to see these two defensive teams going at it. And then also, Vonnie mentioned the home and away record, right? So the Celtics have won a majority of their victories on the road, right? They have a better road record than they do home in the playoffs. What was that number, Neil? Do you remember the number? I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, Boston's 7-2 on the road, and Golden State's undefeated at home.
Yeah, I think Golden State's like 8-0 or 9-0 at home. So crazy dynamics right there, right? Just like it's going to be a fun series. I don't think the Celtics are as banged up as we thought that they were going to be going into this, right? They got kind of a little bit healthy with like Reggie Williams' knee, like wasn't acting up. Smart, you know, is just a beast, as Vonnie loves to mention. You know, like that guy is like a grade 2 sprain and he's still playing, even though he's a piece of shit. But you got to respect that dude. Wish he was on my team. But anyway, let's talk quickly just about the overall series predictions and how many games do you think it's going to go. Anyway, Neil, what's your for the sake of time? Let's go quick. What's your prediction on the series? How many games is it going to go?
I'm going to go with the Warriors in 6 because Boston, they don't look completely buttoned up to me to the degree the Warriors do. There's just been some stretches where Boston has not looked great. They almost had an epic choke in Game 7. They left the door open for Miami to steal that game. And if Miami and Jimmy would have hit that shot, we would probably be talking about how much of a choke that was by Boston. You look at Game 1 against Miami, third quarter, they just get blitzed. Like, that's unacceptable. They have like these stretches where they just don't, they're not playing composed. They are committing stupid turnovers, just not playing at a championship level. And if you're playing a team of Golden State's caliber with those sort of long stretches of mediocre and lackadaisical play, they're going to burn you. Because Golden State, I thought Golden State was going to get challenged by Dallas. I actually picked Dallas to win that series. I looked like an idiot for that pick. But Golden State just rolled right through them. And they seem to be peaking at the right time. And if Boston is not buttoned up for the entire 48 minutes, a 7-minute stretch could cost them 1 or 2 games. And in a series that projects to be as close as this does, that can effectively kill you. So I'm gonna take the Warriors in 6.
Warriors in 6. All right, Panos.
Wait, we didn't hear Vonnie's prediction.
I know. I was going to say real quick though. You said you want to stick with Warriors in 7, or do you want to go Boston?
I mean, that's my original pick. Yes, I'll stick with them. I mean,
that's fine.
I just think they're too strong. I mean, who's going to stop who? I mean, it's a good matchup, but I still think the Warriors have the edge.
Shush.
Shush.
I know. No. Okay, that's fair. But we know who you want to win. But you think that's fair. Okay, so Panos got Warriors in 7, but he actually wants the Celtics. We already know that. Neil got the Warriors in 6. All right, Vonnie, what's your prediction?
You know, in the movie He Got Game, when Denzel's talking to Shuttlesworth and he tells him that he needs to get that hate out of his heart.
You look out for your sister. You ain't got to worry about me no more. But you get that hatred out your heart, boy.
that's how I feel. Like I need to get the hate out of my heart for the Warriors because it's deeply seated in there as a bitter Rockets fan that's got tortured for sure one championship in 2018. The logical, realistic side of me is picking the Warriors in 6 as well, but I'll be cheering for the Celtics, man. And for all the same reasons Neil said, the Celtics are just way too inconsistent. You don't know which Celtics team is going to show up in a particular game, never mind a particular half. And if Tatum and Brown are going to take that next step, they got to bring it every quarter, every game. And you got the Warriors who are too polished, they're healthy, and they got the best player on the court, and that's Steph Curry. The man is still underrated. So unless Marcus Smart figures out a way to injure him and knock him out of the playoffs again, the Warriors are going to take this.
That happened during the regular season, right? Didn't Smart and Curry kind of get into something? Curry got injured.
Yep.
Nice. All right, so I'm going to go Warriors in 6 as well, and that's also because I want it to happen very badly, and I'm more from the school of thought of the team that beat you, I want them to lose. I don't want them to beat you. I don't want to say we lost to the champ because that doesn't matter to me. So I want the Celtics get their freaking asses handed to them. I hate watching the Celtics. I'm going to be enjoying Draymond Green and his tactics and his defense against the Celtics. But to Vonning's point, I think Curry's still the best player on the court. I think Jimmy Butler was definitely the best player, especially two-way player in the last series, right? I don't think Jason Tatum was the best player on the court in maybe any of the rounds. I don't know. Maybe I'll give KD and him a tie in the first round, right? Like KD had no help. But he's definitely not better than Giannis. He definitely wasn't better than Jimmy Butler, in my opinion. And I don't think he's better than Steph right now. I just think that the Warriors have too much firepower. They're a better home team than Miami was, right? So I think that home court, the traditional Oakland fans, are more diehard than I think the South Beach Fickle fans are. Our fans aren't that bad, right? But you guys have objectively a good home court. Clay's, getting back into form, right? He's game 6 Clay is still alive and well. So I think the Warriors are going to pull it off just because the Celtics are still young and inconsistent. They are dealing with more injuries in a sense. But also another big thing too is that they're going to have to go against another really tough defense. So there's going to be no cakewalk against that Warriors defense. They might not have the individual players like the Heat did on the defensive end, but collectively they're number one. And they're also getting a dog back, who's my favorite Warrior, who's coming back from that injury. So Gary Payton Jr. is going to be coming back, and he's really important to the Warriors on the defensive side, right? His on-ball defense. So having him come back is going to be huge because they've already been that number one defensive team in the playoffs without him for half of the playoffs. So, GP senior Gary Payton got his first ring on team to beat Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade gave him a ring with the team geriatrics in 06, right? So, excited to see his son, possibly get a ring, and excited more so to see the Celtics lose because the Celtics suck. Anyway, let's end right there. Thank you so much, guys, for the time today. Really appreciate it. For those of you watching out there, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We will be back again on Wednesday for a Game 1 preview of the NBA Finals. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.
See ya.